Good morning. I am filming this on Friday after I said that I wasn't going to be doing much this weekend because our Naoki Yoshida has given us a post. So this will be uploaded on May 27th. The director and producer of 14 just released, they just released a patch, kind of, 6.11a. It is a patch, but this game typically receives patches 0.1 through 5 and half patches 0.x5, so 0.15, 0.25, and so on. And we get basically 5 patches and 5 half patches per expansion, and between them sometimes we get things like a 0.x1, and that is where we wait 2 weeks to add something. But these A's, it's been a long time since we've had a lot of this stuff. We sometimes get 0.x8s. That's for things like this time around it'll be for data center visit, something that we just don't want to drop it on top of patch content. We want it to have its own space to breathe in case there's any technical issues with it in this case. But we just got 0.11a, and it came with PvP changes, and I noted that it was odd that we were getting PvP changes now instead of on the half patch, because PvP historically has remained kind of very much in that side content category, which is what the half patches are for. So I thought it was pretty cool that they were updating this, but not everybody is happy with the amount of changes, and some people feel in particular that some jobs came out ahead of others. Of course, anytime Black Mage comes out ahead at all, it is noted that Naoki Yoshida, our producer and director, is of course a Black Mage. So therefore, any of the jobs could be powerful by accident, but never Black Mage. And so he said, we have received a great deal of feedback regarding these changes, and in hindsight, I believe we went too far with our adjustments. So most notably for Black Mage. For this, I apologize, and please know that we have plans to address these concerns in patch 6.15, right around the corner, which will be released Tuesday, June 7th. Okay, so now, just to take a brief aside here, we knew, I believe patch 6.1 off the top of my head was released April 12th. We know that they're going about 2 months between the patch and the half patch, so that is the second Tuesday of April. And they just announced this roadmap, so I just want to check in. And now we have moved to the first week of June. So now it is a question of, are they going 2 months or are they going 8 weeks? This is something that we need to pay attention to since the change in the patch schedule release was announced, because this is going to help us predict patches into the future and identify when we might be seeing FanFests, etc. Keep in mind that they will be adding 1 week to the patch schedule every summer and every winter. So if we go 2 months and 1 week, that would push us through July and then August. We could be looking at patch 6.2 coming on August 16th. Somewhere in that ballpark. Keeping in mind that if they do not delay Savage, that would be then. If they do delay Savage, that pushes Savage to the end of the month. That is something that, depending on how you read the messaging, I would, if you don't want it delayed, I would expect it to be delayed. And if you are sad that it's going to be delayed by 2 weeks and come into 6.21, then expect it to be, so I would expect the worst, and be hopeful for whichever way you would prefer it to see. I personally think it would be really great if Savage always got a delay, especially as we move to a longer patch cycle. But all of that aside, let's focus on today's announcement. We have received questions concerning how balance adjustments are decided, how often they'll occur, and when players can expect them for front lines. I will address each of these questions below. I am delighted that so many players, including those previously distanced themselves from PvP, have been enjoying Crystalline Conflict. Since its release in patch 6.1, we've been monitoring certain datasets to implement balance changes and provide improvements to the new mode of PvP. I'll address the balance changes to Frontline in a separate section below. First of all, job win rates. Any of you Warhammer players out there, this is one of the single best indicators of balance. Instead of focusing on what the abilities do in like a one-on-one situation or anything like that, just look if some jobs, in theory, it should be pretty balanced. And so if you have one team that, for example, right now is winning like 70 or 80% of games in Warhammer, that's a sign that something's broken. We keep a constant record of win rates from matches where players of differing jobs compete against each other. Ideally, we strive to keep the win rates at jobs at 50% such matches. You as an individual player might be above or below this, but as the whole, the job should not give an unfair advantage on its own. Furthermore, we separate these statistics into categories such as casual, ranked, and expert matches to better understand gameplay trends across various subgroups. When a particular job starts showing win rates much higher than 50%, we investigate the cause while also taking into account player feedback. If we discover an overpowered action, or perhaps combination of actions creating a potentially unfair advantage, we implement balance changes in a way that will preserve the distinctive characteristics of the job in question. Job with win rates much lower than 50% are treated similarly, but instead of taking a weak job and making it stronger, we strive to enhance its unique attributes in a way that organically improves its chances of victory. At the end of the day, we hope PvP matches are decided based on players' knowledge of jobs, both their own and their opponents', their strategic execution of both offense and defensive actions, their ability to understand and adapt to teams which are randomly matched. And going forward, we will continue adjusting our system as necessary to provide a balanced experience as possible. As a note, I would say in addition to this, I hope that they also look for ways to add variety to it long term. For me, this is side content, so just to place my point of bias, I'm not very good at it. I play it for the fun and the side content of it. So what I don't want is a perfectly balanced game of rock, paper, scissors, but it's always the same rock, paper, and scissors. Job action rates. Another factor we keep in mind when evaluating balance is the rate at which players choose certain jobs over others. Like win rates, we separate these statistics by category and consider data for matches where players of different jobs compete against each other. However, unlike our stance on win rates, our goal is not to emphasize the rate of job usage. We believe players should choose their jobs based on personal preference, which naturally fluctuates. Instead, we look for in-job usage rates are instances of extreme bias that may indicate a particular job is easier or harder to use, which in turn may implicate a greater underlying issue. When a certain job seems significantly more or less palatable to players, we both review player feedback and engage in matches ourselves to investigate any issues present in action balance, or the job's fundamental mechanics. As previously stated, we try to preserve each job's individuality when applying changes, such as introducing comparable weakness to jobs to seem distinctly advantaged while bolstering those that may need support. Balance change schedule. As we receive overwhelming positive feedback on Crystalline Conflict upon its release of patch 6.1, we wanted to implement any and all necessary balance changes as soon as possible in order to further optimize our players' experience. However, Final Fantasy XIV is a project that requires constant and simultaneous development of a wide array of content. Our patch release schedule is both incredibly detailed and decided far in advance. For instance, players may have received patch 6.11a on Tuesday, May 24th, but our developers had finished and implemented it by Friday, May 6th. In reality, this deadline was even extended a day to Saturday, May 7th, as our developers were insistent upon working down to the wire to deliver the most comprehensive update possible within the given time restrictions. According to balance changes made to PvP actions in 6.11a, were based on data and player feedback received by May 6th. Any issues that may have arisen since then would be addressed in our next update. As developers, we have an ever-present desire to adjust and correct even the smallest issues as soon as they occur. However, reality dictates that any changes we make need approximately 2 weeks for debugging, translation, implementation checks, patch note creation, changes to the job guide, and more. The changes made in 6.11a were particularly extensive and implemented on relatively short notice, causing many players to lament their inability to enjoy and explore the nuances of Crystalline Conflict in the state it was released. Reflecting on this, we acknowledged that waiting to release all necessary adjustments in patch 6.15 would have been a better solution. I thought it was weird that it wasn't. Rather than hurrying to release an intermediary patch, as we did. By waiting until 6.15, we would have had more time to verify and test our prospective changes, ensuring they resulted in balanced gameplay. As it is, the only changes we plan to make in PvP in 6.15 are those addressing functionality issues discovered after the 0.11a deadline, adjustments to the Black Mage job actions, which I'll explain below. So those are the only two things. Anything they've discovered after May 6th and Black Mage. We will keep this in mind for future updates and strive to deliver the most stable and effective balance changes we can going forward. I thought it was really weird that we got it as a middle patch. I thought it was a good sign for how much they care about PvP, just because any piece of content rising to the level that we get a mid-patch with mid-patch notes and a mid-patch letter from Yoshi P says that it's a priority. Now, whether or not you like those changes or not is much more subject to opinion and what is the status of things and all of that. But just the fact that they would address this as a mid-cycle thing on its own, rather than just saying, it's going to have to wait till the half-patch, guys, which would have been the standard response, I think is of note here. Now, regarding specifically Black Mage here, by the means of data points in Section 1, Section 2, and extensive player feedback, we became aware that as of Friday, May 6th, the Black Mage was exhibiting the lowest usage and lowest win rates across all player categories. As a point of reference, Black Mage was experiencing victory 14% less than the job with the highest win rates. That implies that we are looking at a 43%, or like 7% below and 7% above, assuming they straddle the line evenly. They may not, but you're looking at like a 43% win rate on average and a 57 on average, which means if you play 10 games on average, you're going to win less than half of them as a Black Mage, but more than half of them as whatever job this is. It may straddle a little bit differently, but like that's probably pretty close since it is relatively a zero-sum game. So, you know, the other jobs factor into that average, but like half the people have to lose every single game of Crystalline Conflict, other than you random weirdos that got a draw. As this issue was discovered by the deadline elaborated in point 3, changes to strengthen this job were deemed difficult to play and promptly incorporated into patch 6.11a. In the following days, I would have the distinct pleasure of battling against many of you within my personal investigation of Black Mage's issues. As many of you know, a Black Mage's overall fighting style is reliant on spellcasting, specializing in the area of effect attacks, damage over time, limiting opponent movement. And while this job has the potential to inflict extensive damage, particularly during limit breaks in many cases, which makes sense, right? The personality of Black Mage and Samurai are both like, they feel like a limit break as a person. In many cases, its relatively low health, sparse methods of self-defense make it difficult for Black Mage to execute said limit breaks before being struck down by melee combatants, especially if they're not ready to address anybody who may have an auto limit break of sorts. Having said this, my personal impression after countless Crystalline Conflict matches, countless, his cannot even be counted by the above methods, in the hands of a skilled PvP combatant, the Black Mage is more than enough to potentially to excel in battle. Okay? Yoshi P's good at Black Mage. These impressions, however, were only gleaned after 6.11a had already been sent off for finishing touches. What should have been minor changes were released as major changes, which ultimately resulted in an overpowered Black Mage. By adding a heavy effect, giving Paradox multiple charges and otherwise decreasing casting times, the Black Mage was granted an undeniable advantage, which we intend to revert back in a future patch. We will also be reducing the level of defense granted by Limit Break action Soul Resonance. I would like to emphasize that the Black Mage is experiencing no preferential treatment by being specially mentioned here. We evaluate action balance for all jobs with a similarly scrutinizing gaze. I only present this instance as an example as it was particularly inconvenient and frustrating to players, and I am truly sorry for the trouble we caused. Now let's talk about front lines. Any of you that have done that chaos, it's really good for leveling. Do your daily front lines. You can even change jobs off you go in as the job you want the experience on, and then change to whichever job you enjoy playing or whichever job you feel best suits the status of the match. As I mentioned above, focusing on our resources on battle adjustments to Crystalline Conflict, the new PvP mode, it has regrettably resulted in certain jobs being over and underrepresented in front lines. It has taken us more time than we had hoped, but adjustments to frontlines will resume in patch 6.18. We expect that to be July because we know that 6.2 should fall in August and 6.15 in June, so it is natural to assume that 6.18 will fall somewhere in between, and that is where people estimating July are most likely gaining that from, that it's going to fall somewhere in between. It doesn't mean it couldn't slide into the end of June or the beginning of August. It just seems like July is the majority shareholder in that time window. The following changes are currently planned. Adjustments to damage dealt and taken by all jobs in frontline, in light of the fact that the number of participants and length of the matches vary greatly between Crystalline Conflict and frontline. Frontline specific adjustments will be made to damage dealt and taken by all jobs to bring them in line and better balance numbers. Adjustments to frequency of limit break usage. As with the first adjustment, the rate at which limit breaks can be used should be appropriate to the number of participants on the field. So we're working towards bringing their frequency of use in line as well. We've already begun making the above changes to ensure they can be implemented in patch 6.18, but we have more specific changes in mind for frontline in patch 6.2, looking at that August timeframe, and beyond, including functionality allowing us to make further frontline specific adjustments. Our aim for not only these changes, but all changes we make to frontline in the future, is to preserve what makes the mode so special. Casual, large-scale battles where players have the freedom to change their job at will, no strict role requirement involved. I would like to apologize once more for how long it has taken us to address the state of the balance of frontline. Keep in mind, they have also said that with 6.2 they want to bring back rival wings, so it would be nice if that actually makes that cut there. Though it will take time, we plan to review play records, and once we have decided on appropriate adjustments, have them tested and implemented. Your continued patience is greatly appreciated. Our miscalculation in the PvP balance adjustments has caused a great deal of frustration, as evidenced by the overwhelming feedback we received. However, I believe such feedback is indicative of PvP's unprecedented popularity. As with our story quests and other PvE content, rest assured we will do our utmost to make PvP in Final Fantasy XIV an experience everyone can continue to enjoy. Naoki Yoshida, our Final Fantasy XIV producer and director. So I think there was some great feedback here. I hope that those of you that are very invested in Crystalline Conflict feel that this is a sign that you are being taken seriously. I would say, as a single note, rather than try to judge them based on the quality of their actions, to judge them off the intent here. And as an intent, I would say that getting a personal letter from Naoki Yoshida, while he does communicate with us probably 100+ times a year, for a singular subject to rise above that is usually a sign that they are taking something very, very seriously. Not every other player is going to have their favorite piece of content get this level of feedback. And that is not a sign, like, on its own that the content is like, oh, well, that's because it's terrible. They could have easily let this slide to the half patch. So the fact that it did get a patch is atypical, and actually seems like he's like, yeah, there's reasons that's typical. I think, it was a mistake. But in general, the fact that they felt that they should go outside the mold, even though they self-admit that going outside the mold is likely part of the cause of the problem, the fact that they were even willing to do it is a sign that they care greatly for Crystalline Conflict. So that's what I would personally focus on here. Keep in mind, I am a very casual Crystalline Conflict member. If you guys want to talk about this more, I am supposed to be not paying attention to this game all weekend and will be streaming again starting on May 30th. I'll be back to streaming. Brian's doing a bunch of New World stuff right now because he's gotten a unique invite to PvP against the devs on the 1st. So definitely reach out to us. We'll be around. I hope you guys are having a great day and a great weekend. This will be uploaded at some point on the 27th. And I'll see you guys later. Monday. Kinda.